everybody, good evening. I hope you guys are doing well and that your preparations almost there. Now, I know we still have a couple of days to catch, and that can really be your make or break. And at this point of time, the only gear that you have to be on has to be turbo. But here we come with all of these little bursts of revision series to help accelerate your practice and ultimately be able to level your confidence to the cat threshold. And with that, I, Suyukti Seth, am here to be able to give you a quick session which is going to be all around the odd sentences that we tend to be having. Now, before we move on, I would just want a quick audibility and a visibility check. So, if anybody could be generous enough to just write in the chat box as to my audibility and visibility both, we shall begin with no further ado. And of course, the first 5 minutes are going to be very important. So I would like your undivided attention because there is where I will tell you what the odd sentences are all about and the kinds of things that you must keep in mind. Okay, now when we tend to be doing the cat VARC section, we know that they're predominantly taken up, they're eaten up, in fact, by the reading comprehension. Now, it is the remaining set of questions that are going to have all of the verbal ability section. Now, the verbal ability section must always be your bankable section. Why? Because that's the section which takes less amount of time but gives you more number of marks. And at this point of time, like I said, you have to make sure which are the places wherein you can maximize your marks from. Now, unlike the parajumbles, which are actually a tough nut to crack because they're subjective, the theta versions, the odd sentence can actually be by your side, right? And it doesn't hurt to get a couple of scores up by doing a right question. Now, since you don't have to make a series, you only have to find the one statement that is wrong. You are doing an easier job, and there are options that are, of course, provided to us. Even if not that, identifying one sentence versus making a series, we know what is easier and why. Now, when you tend to be doing the odd sentence, guys, always remember there are ideally three things that you should always weigh from the lines that have been provided. So, an odd sentence does not have to be blatantly an out sentence. It does not have to be an outcast altogether. Well, if that is how it is, nothing like it. फिर तो सबसे ज़्यादा easy हो गया, सबसे ज़्यादा बढ़िया हो गया. But अगर आपको दिख रहा है कि there is a certain odd statement that you have to find out and that you're getting very confused between the options, then please make sure that if it has to be an outcast, if it has to be an odd sentence, it must have any of the three elements to itself. An odd sentence can be identified by a tone, by the plot, or by the essence. Now, what I mean by the tone is all might speak about the same, but a lot of times you see that three sentences or four sentences might have a very positive tone to itself, while one might have a negative. All of those could be argumentative, while one could be persuasive. All of the other could be didactic, while one could be rhetoric. So there are ways in which you can identify the tone and find out what needs to be done. Second, plot. Plot simply means that you find the line which is just outrageously wrong. The plot, that is all of the other sentences seem to be speaking about this one idea, and then that is a misfit. I mean, it doesn't fit anywhere. Now, a lot of people have another way to approach the odd sentence, and that is they start making their series. Whatever doesn't fit in the series is the odd sentence. Well, that is a perfect way to do it, but it's time consuming. And then a lot of times what happens is unknowingly you get stuck in the loop of making the right sequence. Because you have to understand at that point of time, your pairs will also help. So you have the pairs, so you know that, okay, this is a trio, then the one that doesn't fit becomes the odd sentence. However, sometimes that could also be a challenge. And the third is the essence. Please make sure that ultimately they all take you back to what the primary, the pivotal idea of all of the lines are about. Now, if you think that there is a certain line which is peripheral to the idea, but it's not matching the essence of it, it will not be the correct statement. So an odd sentence, like I said, does not have to be written on the face value of it, I am odd. That's not how it's going to be. It will have any of the three things or all of the three things for you to be able to decide. And that is basically what we are also going to be doing. So what I bring forth for you guys is a set of 20 questions which are going to be ranging from easy to medium to difficult. And they're going to also be ranging between 4 sentence, 5 sentence, a couple of 6 sentence, but I don't want to take 6 sentence in, the category of it. It's between 4 and 5, and we will have to check which of the following is going to be the right answer for us, which is the odd sentence. The drill is going to be very simple. I am simply going to set aside, I will give you a moment to view the questions, read through it, and once you find the odd sentence, please make sure that you do write in the chat box. We will, when we discuss, also make the series so that unconsciously or at the back end, your parajumbles are also being taken care of, and we are also being able to find what the odd sentence is. So, without any further ado, let us begin on this amazing exercise that we have, which is all about the odd sentences. Please begin, guys. The first question. Make sure that you do write the answer in the chat box. Please go. Okay, let's see. In debating clubs, formats reward crisp refutation more than slow qualification. Judges penalize hedging even when uncertainty is epistemically honest. A new wing of skylights reduced energy bills in winters. Okay. As novices advance, they learn the front load concessions to control the frame. Now, over here, we understand that we are trying to be talking about, of course, the debate club and how exactly do things function in the debate club. So you can always begin with A. Now, in debating clubs, format reward crisp refutation more than slow qualification, right? So there has to, of course, be crisp refutation. Refute is when you simply say say against the one thing. Now, obviously, after this, what is going to happen if it's a debate club? Then, of course, the judges are going to penalize hedging when it comes to uncertainty is epistemically honest. And as a novice, somebody who's a newbie, he tends to advance. They learn the front load concessions to control the frame, and that is when they understand how should I be mastering over it? How should I, hold on to the audience? How should I be able to keep them gripped and all of these things. So these are the kinds of learning tricks and trades that a novice will have to learn. So while we understand A, B, D all make a part of the debating idea, the one thing which is clearly a misfit becomes C, because the new wing of skylights reduced, and we're not even talking about the energy bills. It has nothing to do with it. It's all about the debate and how the judges and the contestants interact. So clearly the odd sentence will have to be C. Let's get on to the next one. Please begin, guys, the second one. Okay, let's see here. Alumni weekend schedules were moved to spring to avoid exam clashes. Okay. Once placement salaries became a headline metric, brochures inflated a median with exclusion. So we understand that both of these are different. This is talking about placement, this is about the alumni. Now, accreditation visits then demanded raw data, forcing schools to publish accounting rules. Okay, all right. Over time, applicants learn to ignore league tables and read methodology footnotes. So while all of these seem to be about some sort of classroom setup, we know that this is about the alumni weekend. Alumni are going to always be the pass outs. So while B, C, and D might make a set, the one odd sentence that we have by default becomes option A, because once placement salaries became a headline metric, brochures inflated median with exclusion. Then we talk about accreditation visits, then demanded raw data, obviously talking about the medians and the metric scores that we have over time. The applicants also learn to ignore league tables and read the methodology footnotes. So it was all about the footnote. While nothing of this, of course, speaks about the alumni. Alumni are always going to be people who passed the school. That's not what this is. This seems to be about some other data altogether. So B, C, and D make a pair, while A becomes the odd sentence. This was also very easy to find out. The next one, please. Okay, let's see. Microcredit narratives promised entrepreneurship. Most loans patched household cash flow gaps. Lenders optimized center meetings to reduce collection cost. Okay, it still looks like some sort of cash flow. Borrowers rotated liabilities within kin networks to avoid delinquency flags. Okay, all right. A randomized field trial of tutoring apps raised reading scores. Okay, now this does not speak about cash flow whatsoever. Impacted reports reframed repayment rates as discipline rather than prosperity. So about cash, about cash, about cash, and about cash. But this clearly is about the tutoring app, how it raised the reading score. You know that this will have to be an odd sentence because what this doesn't speak about, it doesn't speak in the same context as what the other statements do speak about. The next one, please. Next one. Volunteers first converged around a single bug tracker to reduce duplicate reports. Maintainers then wrote contribution guides that codified code style and test rituals. Release managers cut minor versions monthly, reserving features for long-term branches. As the project grew, steering elections formalized what had been tacit influence. A survey of artisan guild sales showed how motives traveled with trade. So, of course, you know that while all of these are about the managers, the project, and the volunteers, and how all of these codified code style rituals were maintained. The one thing that speaks about the artisans will have to be the odd sentence. So I don't even have to bother about making a series here because I know that by default, this is what will have to be the odd statement here. Let's get on to the next one, please. The curator grouped the paintings chronologically to foreground shifts in brushwork. Viewers lingered at the labels that explained pigments and binders. The museum cafe introduced a seasonal menu to boost weekly footfall. Conservation notes showed how humidity had altered blue tones across decades. Now, this is about a curator. A curator is going to be one who's going to assemble museum pieces. And this, obviously, the kind of labeling that is being done to talk about the pigments and the binds, that is how the paintings must have been. And then we have conservation notes which are written, which actually talk about how much time and what humidity and at what temperature have these been kept so that they are not destroyed and that they can be preserved for future work. This is not about a cafe. So the one statement, which is an odd sentence over here, clearly becomes option C. The next one, everybody. Question number 6. Early travelogues framed ports through the lens of provisioning, water, food, pilots. Later accounts dwelt on sanitary boards and quarantine flags after cholera outbreak. Editors stitched routes by reprinting nautical notices alongside diaries. Place names shifted spellings as pilots transcribed from local pilots' patter. Across editions, the genre moved from marvels to procedures and forms. A botanical hand list of alpine lynches, standardized Latin binomials for mountain flora. So we understand that all of the statements that we have over here seem to be talking about how the travelogues were essentially framed and how the names were given. Except for this, of course, why are we talking about a botanical hand list altogether? This is not about the botanical, it was about the names, the places, the way, the ideas were given out. And then it says early travelogues frame ports to the length of the provisioning. So, whatever it is, the travelogues went about by saying whatever was the provision that was given, it was always decided on the basis of this. Then comes the second one. Then it later dwelt onto the sanitary boards, and then the naming of how it went. The one statement which is an absolute misfit over here will have to be F, because the botanical hand list of the alpine lynches does not make any context or sense to the kind of nomenclature that was given to the travelogues framing. So the correct answer becomes option F, the next one. Okay, let's get on to the next one. Cities install low emission zones, but logistics firm replanned routes at night. Okay. Residents reported quieter mornings yet heavier truck traffic before dawn. Okay, still looks about how the replanning of the city is being done travel wise. Sensors showed particulate spikes shifting rather than falling all over. Okay, still further talks about the emission zones and all of that. A chapter of the medieval glossators, sorry, traced marginal notes in legal manuscript. Obviously, this looks so abrupt with all of these lines also. It's all of this is about the low emission zones. It's about, what sort of vehicle was being passed when and when was it the best time to breathe and stuff like that and why. Now, enforcement tightened via plate reading cameras linked to graduated fines. Benefit materialized only when delivery windows were regulated alongside emission. So obviously, this is just right there, the odd sentence will have to be D, because all of these talk about the emission. And the one statement that tends to be talking about medieval glossators is, of course, the odd sentence. The next one, please. Okay, let's see. Studies found indoor PM 2.5 plummeted when households switched from biomass to LPG. So we understood that the studies found that the pollution particulate matter 2.5 plummeted. It sort of reduced. Yet refill cost nudged poorer families back to firewood. But of course, they couldn't refill the LPG, which is why they went back to firewood. Women reported fewer headaches and eye irritation during months with steady LPG. Okay. Health workers timed cough incidents with cooking times. to target behavioral change. Okay, a pilot lane reserved for electric buses reduced curbside NO2 near schools. Obviously, now pilot lane, what am I going to do with that one thing? Programs that synchronize subsidies with delivery routes sustain usage through the monsoon. So all of these seem to be talking about the shift to LPG and the kind of benefits that it had, and how did they synchronize even during the monsoons. But of course, a pilot train reserve the electric buses. What am I going to do about this? Reduce the curbside NO2 near schools. That clearly is going to be an odd sentence for me. Let's go to the next one. Next one. The coinage reform aimed to curb clipping by milled edges. Mint officials staggered shift to guard against leakage of dye patterns. Pamphleteers framed debasement as a moral failing, not a fiscal tool. A video platform created fund paid per watch hour above the threshold. Courts prosecuted counterfeiters under statutes originally written for treason. So you know that all of this is about coinage and counterfeit. Well, what is the entire idea about the video platform? That makes no sense. Now, I know over here another thing that we could not have understood was statement C, but we still know that the pamphleteers framed debasement as a moral failing, not a fiscal one. So we understand this has something to do with, of course, the monetary angle of it. So that's going to be within the idea of the counterfeiting, but of course, not our odd sentence. The correct answer becomes option D. Let's get to the next one. Please go. Okay. Question number 10. Yes, the previous answer was D. Very good, Abhay. Let's try on to the next one. When recalled, a memory enters a labile state before being stored again. Therapies exploit this window by pairing the recall. So obviously this window over here could have been, the the labile state. And the therapies exploit this window by pairing the recall with safer cues. Makes sense. Grant agencies now require data management plans for neuroimaging repositories. Okay, the repositories are neuroimaging, which is again about the mind, which is all about the memory. Makes sense. Blocking the reconsolidation pathway can weaken the original fear trace in animals. Okay, that could be a little weird for us. And the clinical challenge in timing is the intervention to the unstable phase. Well, of course, all of this can be the one thing that we know is clearly going to be a misfit is going to be statement D. So once again, we do have a D. Let's get on to the next one, please. Okay, so we have an incoming of C. Let's see. The promise of self-tracking devices is that numbers will nudge us towards healthier routines. Yet, most dashboards reward streaks rather than recovery, undervaluing rest. Okay, sorry, makes sense. Clinical trials must register protocols before enrollment begins to curb selective reporting. I mean, why are we talking about the clinical trials now? We're talking about self-tracking until now. When goals become points, users often chase metrics that crowd out intrinsic motivation. So we know that A, B, and D is definitely a series in itself, with the odd sentence being statement C. Very well done there. Please get on to the next one. 12. Let's see for 12th. As presses multiplied, printers favored a small set of spellings to simplify typecases. The 1710 Statute of Anne established author's right in Britain. Okay, well, this is about, of course, the presses multiplied. It's about the printers. This is about the author. Early dictionaries, now this goes back to printing, then borrowed from these house styles when fixing proper usage. Regional variant retreated from print even as they survived in speech, the standard pages. Now, all of these are about printing and presses, while the only one which is about the author's right becomes the odd sentence because that doesn't find any place in the sequence or in the segment that we have. So, the odd sentence that we have is going to be option B. The next one, please. Let's go. The draw to your syllabus compressed practicals into Dawn labs to save power. Faculty shifted Vivos online but kept grading rubrics unchanged. Student councils bartered lab slots for study rooms access during finals. Okay. The regional rail operators. Now, obviously, this is about the kind of tough fear, that was with respect to the students and the teachers and how they were accommodating. The rail operator leased locomotives under power by the hour contract. Post semester reviews asked whether equity suffered under the new routine. So we know obviously the odd sentence will have to be D. Very well done there. The next one, please. Okay, let's see. Downstream irrigation boards planned cropping calendars around meltwater peaks. Philologists dated loan words by sound shifts in medieval. Okay, we know either of these have to be a have to be an odd sentence. Why? Because it's about planned cropping, while this is about sound shift. So we'll have to see which of the following. Sensors showed earlier spring runoff as slow. Okay, now this is still about the spring and the snow line, so pretty much with rhyme to this, but definitely not this. Reservoir rules shifted to hold more water. Okay, now that's again about the irrigation. Makes sense. Villages diversified wells to reduce exposure to erratic streams. The policy are moved from fixed monsoon assumptions to flexible storage. So I think we now know clearly the odd sentence will have to be B for us. Excellent job there, guys. Let's get on to the next one, please. The next, the early promise of MOOCs was scale. Completion rates exposed shallow engagement. Okay. Cohort based pacing restored peer pressure missing from open enrollments. Assessment moved from multiple choice to authentic task with rubrics. The postal service redesigned. Okay, now what about the postal service? Of course, redesigned stamp adhesives to be water soluble makes no sense. Learning analytics progressed from click accounts to behavioral segment certification. Okay, now all of this was, of course, about how how the peer pressure, how it was missing. It was all this is all about the enrollment, the assessment. It has nothing to do with the postal services. So of course that is what will have to be your odd sentence over here. On to the next one, please. 16th. Yeah. The museum's not gallery admitted only 30 visitors per slot. Okay. Forecasters who ignored base rate overweighted vivid recent failures. Training that forced prior estimates before reading case files improved calibration. Regression to long run frequencies reduced the swing of year to year prediction. So, of course, this is nothing about the gallery and the way, it sort of took in people. 30 visitors per slot. All of this is about the forecasters who actually ignored the base rate, overweighted vivid recent failures, and then all about it. So, when you read it also, you might not really know the crux of the idea, but you know that A is definitely not, it's not about the museum and the visitors and how many they could accommodate per slot. So, clearly, the odd sentence will have to be A. The next one, please. 17th one. In Test cricket, field setting scripts risk as much as bowlers do. Win probability models still underrate time lost to fading light. The groundsman moisture reading foretold swing in the first session. A study of coral polyps. Okay, now this is all about the cricket. Why are we reading about the coral polyps who are in the sea? Found symbiont loss over degree heating threshold. Why we talk about the polyps and their global warming? So obviously, the one statement which is going to be an odd sentence will have to be D for us. The next one, please. Let's see. Public apologies that name harm and propose repair tend to rebuild trust. Okay, that's how you can rebuild trust. Vague mistakes were made, statements correlate with sharper customer churn. Boards that tie remediation to executive bonuses, avoid performative pledges, a field of study of termite mode. Okay, now this is all about how is it that you can get the customer churning done. But a field study of termite mold revealed ventilation through porous chimneys. Now, obviously, you know that this is so absurd. This will have to be the odd sentence that we have. Next one, please. Freight vendors followed commuter tides, shifting carts before dawn. The municipal hawker, obviously, the hawker will become the vendor. Policy zoned sidewalks by width and fire exit. Tree ring chronologies calibrate medieval droughts using stable isotopes makes no sense. Festivals briefly rewired football, reshaping where tea sold the fastest again in terms of the hawker and the vendor concentration. So the one thing which is an absolute misfit, of course, will have to be C. And the last one for today, guys, the 20th one. And let's get on to the last one for today. The brevity of inscription suggests a logosyllabic repertoire rather than long prose. Okay, the brevity, that is, it's about the short, how short the inscription is going to be. It's going to suggest a logosyllabic repertoire. Now, sign frequencies show positional regularities hinting at syntactic constraints. So now the reason why they go about with that is because there are some syntax related constraints. Okay, that is exactly what this is. However, the absence of bilinguals limit decisive decipherment claims. Okay, now bilingual is going to be multiple languages. Now, hordes of denarii in Britain mark troop payments along frontiers. Now, why are we talking about the troop payments, by the way? Weren't we talking about the inscriptions and the way they were put out? So, obviously, we know that the one statement that is going to be a misfit is going to be statement D. And with that, we come to an end to this session of the 20 questions that I had for you with respect to odd sentence. I hope you were able to get the answers right because this is actually scoring. It is not as difficult or complicated as the parajumbles, and there's always a chance to get the answer right here. So please make sure that you are practicing all of this extensively and All of these are also fragmented exercises which ultimately help strengthen our comprehension altogether. So please make sure that you keep going on to practicing all of the topics that you have and not just isolate yourself and do the reading comprehensions only, because the VRC section is made up of a lot of other things, not just this. And with that, it is going to be a wrap. Thank you so much for giving me your valuable time. And you're going to see more of us, the entire team, coming up with these short revision series for you, which is going to ensure that you stay on track. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great evening.